Well, aloha and good morning. It is Tuesday, June 16th here on the platform of the Honolulu Star-Advertiser. I'm Ryan Kalesuji, joined by Yunji Denise. This is the COVID-19 Care Conversation brought to you by the Hawaii Executive Collaborative and Hawaii Pacific Health. We want to thank all of you for tuning in. So great to already see people commenting in our comment section and letting us know where you're watching from. Of course, this is a conversation really to engage all of you here in Hawaii and beyond about some of the impacts of COVID-19 here in Hawaii, as well as giving you some of the updates, headlines, and information that you need to get through this time. Yunji, this morning we have yet another special guest joining us.
That's right. And I know some of you have some questions. Rebecca says, what does somebody from Central Pacific Bank have to do with COVID? You know, that is a great question. We have invited Paul Yonamine on today. He is the chairman and CEO of the Central Pacific Financial Corporation and the executive chairman of Central Pacific Bank. So what does CPB have to do with COVID? Well, Paul Yonamine is also a member of the Hawaii Executive Collaborative, which is a consortium of business and civic leaders working to make Hawaii a better place. And some of those members have been working on this concept of a travel bubble. So exploring what does that look like? You know, we've heard the governor and the lieutenant governor talk about mechanisms to start to open tourism in a very strategic way. One of the ideas is to create basically travel corridors, if you will, with countries with low infections rates, like South Korea, Japan, New Zealand, Australia. And so there are business leaders and civic leaders who have been sort of workshopping ideas and also presenting to lawmakers, including members of the Senate, about what some of these ideas, what some of these corridors could look like. So since Paul Yonamine has been a big part of that discussion, we invited him on here to really give us a sense of what this could look like. We know a lot of you have questions about reopening tourism, when that could happen. The governor's been talking, not specific dates, but kind of giving us a time frame, perhaps the end of July. It sounds like closer to August. So we've invited Paul Yonamine, and here he is joining us now. Thank you so much for being here this morning. If you could start out telling us a little bit about what a travel bubble is and what that might look like for Hawaii.
Sure, thanks a lot. And by the way, Yunji and Ryan, thanks for having me on. And and before I touch on that, I just wanted to address Rebecca's question, about what is a chairman of CPB doing about travel bubbles. CPB, we're 65 years old today, and we're very fortunate to have tens of thousands of customers here in Hawaii. And naturally, our profitability, our success hinges entirely on the success of our customers. And our customers are hurting today. With the shutdown in tourism, there has been a significant impact. And, and being a part of a bank, I review all of our loans, at least on a higher level on a daily basis. And I could see the hurt. I could see the kinds of deferrals we give, the concerns we have, whether businesses are going to be, successful going forward, whether they're going to remain a going concern. And that's why even as a CEO of a financial institution, it was important for me to get involved in what we could do to revive the economy. And tourism is a very big component of that. Now, I've been with CPB for only a year and a half. Prior to that, I spent a lot of time in Asia Pacific. This last tour of duty, I was there for probably about 17, 18 years. And so I always follow what's happening in the Asia Pacific region. And I started to see a lot of what they call travel corridors and bubble activity because of this pandemic. And it just seemed to me that with the very low infection rates in Asia Pacific, and by the way, they're mostly on a per million basis on infections and death rates. They're significantly lower than Hawaii, actually. And Hawaii's done a really good job, compared to most states in the United States. I think we're about third best in terms of infection rates, for example. Japan, let's take Japan as an example. Their infection rate per million is a third that to Hawaii. So it was very interesting to me that, why can't we restart tourism in a very calculated and low risk way by looking for low infection regions and just try to get the tourists back here. Now, how are travel bubbles going to look like? Nobody's really an expert at travel bubbles. I would be really surprised if there's any expert here in Hawaii or anywhere in the world for that matter, because This is the first pandemic that all of us are experiencing. The bottom line is this: a successful travel bubble, I believe, will be between two low infection regions, and the heads of both regions need to get to the table and hammer it out. What works best for those two regions? And it's safety, but it's also for all the residents and concerned citizens that they feel comfortable about it. So for example, between China and Singapore, and it was just announced the other day, they require testing at the departure airport and then testing at the arrival airport. So 2 tests. But then you have other areas where they don't require testing. If Hawaii, for example, in Japan is considered a level 3 country for COVID-19 infections, meaning the United States has a very high rate of infection, so it's regarded as level 3, which requires quarantine for 14 days. But if there was a possibility of stripping out Hawaii and just looking at the infection rate for Hawaii, it would be level 1 in Japan, and that would require no quarantine. That would be the optimal scenario, but we're not quite there yet. Again, has to go back to that negotiation between the two regions.
And what have you heard? I mean, in your discussion, I know that you presented to the Senate Committee on COVID-19 a few weeks back about this concept and about this idea. And it was sort of the first time that we got more information about what that was based on the things that you folks were talking about and looking into. But on the Japan side, have you had any communication or heard anything from their end, from their country's end, about maybe their willingness to see Hawaii as one of these travel bubble partners? And do you think that they would feel comfortable coming to a place like Hawaii while the rest of the United States are seeing cases surging?
Sure. So, we've been going through a number of different channels. One is through the Japan-Hawaii Travel Association here in Hawaii. It consists of 40 of the major Japanese companies that bring in the 1.6 million Japanese tourists per year. And so all of those companies and their respective heads here in Hawaii have reached out to their headquarters and using every possible angle in lobbying the Japanese government, to lighten up their assessment or how they go about controlling quarantine on anyone who would be coming in from Hawaii or tourists returning from Hawaii to Japan. That's one angle. I think the governor has reached out to Japan now, but that's quite recent. And so the governor is talking to the relevant individuals with the Japanese government. There's still a lot of negotiation remaining. Japan is going through, quite a bit of hurt themselves, because of COVID-19. They want to make sure that there's more domestic travel so they can help the prefectures and help the hotels and the other travel-related companies in Japan. So they're taking this very domestic approach, which concerns us because we'd like the Japanese to come back to Hawaii. So we've been working also on a very important communication campaign, letting the Japanese know that it's not safe for them to come now, but we're thinking of them and we've been sending them a lot of content. And shortly, we're going to be sending them information on some of the hygiene protocol. For example, like Hawaii Lodging and Tourism Association has put together some standards and protocol, and we're trying to show them that Hawaii's safe, right? There has been a lot of good, positive press in Japan about how safe Hawaii is, and how the governor acted on March 26th to do the quarantine. Mayor Caldwell doing the curfew, things of that nature. The Japanese were very impressed with that. And so they have this view that Hawaii is health and safe. Naturally, they hear about New York, they hear about the Midwest and some of the, the spiking and the spread of COVID there, but they do have a very positive image about Hawaii. Now, what's interesting about the Japanese, though, is that they don't want to come to Hawaii and infect anyone here. They're very selfless on that front. Mm-hmm. That's what makes them even better, tourist targets in my mind, right? But But I talked a lot about Japan. I'm not focused just on Japan. I'm focused on low infection regions with tourists that spend a lot of money here in Hawaii, because we have 150,000 unemployed, 23.5% unemployment rate. And that's what we're trying to address. And so, if I sound like I have a bias towards Japan, it's not, it's not just because I lived in Japan. But it is, I think, the most viable economic, start for Hawaii in the tourism area.
Daphne Montanero has a comment. She says airlines and hotels need to be booked at least 80% to make money. So her concern is that this might not represent enough of a market to actually make folks actually start to make money. I think this is a case of not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what if we did open up, let's say, to Japan or Australia or New Zealand, what kind of an economic impact could that make? What kind of a difference are we talking about?
Sure. I think, if you go to bottom, just looking at the bottom line, of course, if you don't get enough capacity, whether it be on an airplane or even at the hotels, makes it very difficult for businesses, to operate that way. But that, we're not just talking about bottom line. I mean, in the long run, corporations are going to be looking at the bottom line. But this is about how to invest and restart the tourism industry we've never experienced before. And, it's about gaining more confidence, gaining more comfort, and seeing success stories. And, this is where the airlines, some of the hotels, they have to be, all in on this too. They have to work, with the state, with the larger community, get people more confident that tourism does work, despite having it coexist with COVID-19. So, from a business perspective, if I target an objective of trying to get people to be more confident and comfortable about tourism, so then when tourists come here, they're not hated and, people don't yell at them to go home. You have to take baby steps, and that is part of the business strategy. And then hopefully, through success stories like that, we'll start building back capacity.
Of course, is allowing these visitors to come to Hawaii through these travel bubbles to be able to help the economy. But additionally, it's also about allowing Hawaii residents potentially to go out and we've
Absolutely.
been sort of in this lockdown for a while, and there are many who would love to go to Japan. And do you think
Sure.
that sort of is an incentive maybe for these countries to promote the fact that Hawaii residents would like to travel that way, and additionally, realizing that Hawaii residents also have to go through this process to get back home and to come back to Hawaii?
Well, when you're overseeing, a large country like Japan or Korea, fortunately for them, they have a very diversified economy. They're not, for Hawaii, it's fundamentally tourism and defense. Japan has technology, manufacturing, a lot of agriculture, and a number of different industries. So, as the head determining, how to open up entry into one's country, they may not be feeling the compelling need or the sense of urgency as we do. Now, having said that, Japan is just, over the past several years, they've done extremely well in tourism. They went, I remember when I was there in 2011, we had 6 million tourists per annum. And last year in 2019, they had 40 million, right?
Wow.
And so they have some tourism issues to deal with themselves, but they've basically opted to just stop that. And they're relying on other, diversified industries, right? And they can still keep going. But there are many, prefectures and people who'd love to see, the tourists coming back, especially even from Hawaii. And as part of the travel bubble, the travel corridor concept, it has to be bilateral. So if they can come here, we could go there,
Right.
And it has to work well in both directions.
Let's talk about time frame. I know you said that the governor has reached out now, perhaps to some counterparts in Japan, but realistically, how soon could something like this get up and running? I'd imagine that there's a lot of red tape that needs to be gone through.
Right. Yunji, that's the toughest question to answer right now. I think the state has just initiated dialogue with Japan, and and the Japanese government is, and many of these other governments throughout Asia, maybe with the exception of a couple countries in Southeast Asia, they're not necessarily known to make fast decisions, and so there is concern there, and we're naturally approaching it from an economic view, from bilateral relationship view, but it's more of an emotional plea. Japanese love Hawaii. They have 2 million hula dancers in Japan, who are members in hula associations, and some good developments recently. A lot of companies are starting to do Hawaiian fairs in Japan because they know that people can't come to Hawaii. So down the road there might be a good export opportunity for us. But I think what's most important is that we engage with the respective regional heads, different countries or states, or what have you. Get into that dialogue and do what we're pretty good at is we got to sell Hawaii, and we have to convince them to open it up quickly. Yeah, we have a significant problem here, and again, that's why as a CEO of a financial institution, I'm involved in this, because otherwise I'm in the sidelines just seeing my customers get in worse financial condition. And this is the only thing I could do is to try and get involved, and give my 2 cents to the governor, give my 2 cents to these low infection regions, just trying to stimulate the economy this way.
What has sort of, through this pandemic, obviously there are a lot of people struggling, but we're seeing a lot of good things happening as well. On your end, what has been the response to sort of maybe the collaboration that has happened with some of these executives from these companies? Because I imagine there's, you just mentioned about the impact that it's having for your customers. Other financial institutions are feeling the same way, other organizations as well. So if you can speak to that, sort of the maybe collaborative nature that this has sort of brought together some of these executives to rally together to have these sorts of discussions.
Sure. I've worked pretty much all over the world. I was very fortunate to be able to come back to Hawaii a year and a half ago. But there is no other place like Hawaii where not just people in the community, but even the private sector really come together. And my hat's off to Bob Harrison, Rich Wacker, Peter Ho, all my competitors in a way. But we work very closely together right now. And you don't see that too often, in other markets. Even at CPB, we had a team of over 200 working, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, doing the Paycheck Protection Program. So we underwrote 7,500 loans, and it was a Herculean effort, and we're doing a lot of best practice sharing with the other banks. We're all working through the Hawaii Bankers Association. Just great collaboration there. We worked on Keep Hawaii Cooking, was something that Central Pacific Bank launched. But there are many other programs like that where we're trying to provide food and other necessary staple items. And again, we saw a lot of organizations coming together. So, to that end, I mean, that's one of the reasons why I came back to Hawaii. This is where I want to live and end up. But, we need to take it a couple steps further. Now I think is a time, not just for the private sector, but for the whole community, government to all come together and take a hard look at what are those key drivers for our economy. And why do we have 150,000 people who are out of jobs right now? And by the way, it's going to hurt a lot more come this fall, right? Right now, you have a lot of federal subsidies through the CARES Act. We have the PPP money. People got their stimulus check. They get their $600 additional benefits for their unemployment insurance. But all of that starts running out. And unfortunately, unless we open up tourism again, my sense is September, October, it's going to really start hurting. And that's why we've been working on this with an extreme sense of urgency.
Well, and to that point, Sylvie Berg says businesses are shutting down every day because no tourists. What is it really feels like, when you talked about the PPP money running out and we're kind of in this window that seems to be rapidly closing. If we don't act now, if we don't get these businesses back, what do you foresee for Hawaii, given, what you've seen among your customers and what you see for your competitors as well?
Sure. Well, we have to do everything we can to avoid that. UNG, and that's why, I've been spending more time on these issues than banking business lately, to be quite honest with you. But, with a poor economy, an ailing economy, we can unfortunately look at mental health issues. It could be a lot of stress-related issues. And unfortunately, if the past is any indication, there might be more crime as well. And so these are some of the really difficult trade-offs. On one hand, Hawaii's done a great job in containing COVID-19 with probably infections under 800. Very unfortunate, but 17 deaths, right? And there's probably roughly about 50 active cases today. But, when you look at that data, and, every life counts, but you have to look at it to the 150,000 people who don't have jobs today and what can happen as a result of that. And so, if you start thinking about worst case scenarios, I mean, there's no end to it. It's our job as senior executives in the private sector, and hopefully a lot of our elected officials in the public sector, we all need to step up and make sure that that doesn't happen, and one of the most important things, and that's why I like the travel bubble. I'm not an expert at this, but unfortunately, neither is anyone here. But it just seems to me common sense that we bring in people from a low infection region, and we make sure that, we have whatever protocols included to make it even safer for our residents, our workers, for the tourists. That could be fever screening, it could be a tracing system, it could be a number of things, a survey, before they even board a plane. And if we can bring in those tourists who have this propensity to spend a lot, which, the Japanese, for example, on the average, they spend 40% more than the West Coast visitor, right? So that's a good place to start. And we can create a framework, get people more comfortable and confident, and then we could roll it up to other low infection regions, including naturally the mainland, of course. No one's trying to bypass the mainland, focusing on Asia Pacific initially.
Okay.
All right. Well, Paul Yonamine, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule here this morning to, sort of update us on some of the things that you folks are working on there. And thank you really for that conversation. I think it's something that a lot of us, it's great to hear that these conversations are being had. And I think it's necessary that they are having them, especially on the level that you're involved in. So thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Aloha.
Thank you.
Bye.
Very interesting to hear, some tough realities that he's laying out, what he's seeing with his customers and the 150,000 plus people who are out of work right now in Hawaii. These travel bubble concepts, they sound great. And he's right. The countries that we're trying to establish these corridors with, they have other options, right? Japan doesn't necessarily need however many tens of thousands of Hawaii tourists, because really, how many people does that really represent for their bottom line? On the flip side, we absolutely need visitors from everywhere eventually, but hopefully from some of these low infection places first. So it does become an emotional ask as opposed to a practical ask.
Yeah, and it's interesting to hear about how that process is going to have to take and how long that may potentially take, but also the partners involved in educating them, as he said, about how to be a tourist when you come here, about the safety protocols that are going to be put in place, the communication efforts and marketing tools that are going to be needed to advertise to these countries. Because, I got to imagine is if these travel corridors start up, it's not like people are going to jump on a plane immediately. It's going to take some time to educate people and let people know that Hawaii is safe and ready to go. And it may take a few months before we actually start seeing more and more people begin to use these corridors, so to speak, if they are established. So again, those are conversations that are happening. Also great to hear that they are working together with some of the other financial institutions and other people of that level to have these important conversations that are effectively working with state government, because it really is. I mean, it sounds cliche, but everybody has to really come together during these times.
Absolutely. Ingrid Peterson says, we need more federal dollars. When is Brian Schatz coming on the program? Well, Ingrid, you are in luck. He is joining us on Friday, and we will absolutely be asking him if there is another push for perhaps more PPP, perhaps another CARES Act, what kind of federal assistance is in the pipe, if any. So we'll be asking him that. And if you've got specific questions for Senator Schatz, put them in the comments, and also be sure to join us for him on Friday.
That's right. And we also know that Tuesday in the past has been our unemployment segment, where we talk to Scott Murakami. Of course, Scott Murakami is taking some time off right now. So, but if you do have unemployment questions, please enter them in today's comments. We're going to be sending a few of them over to the Department of Labor and Industrial Relations to get some answers. So if you have some specific questions that you would like answered, please feel free to enter them in the comment section. We'll send those comments over, and we'll get to them tomorrow with whatever answers they provide us on the questions that you may have about unemployment. We would love to hear if some of you are still waiting, because we know that there are some people that are still having difficulties getting into the system. And so if that's you, and again, if you have any specific questions, please let us know. You know, Yunji, today is pretty a historic day, so to speak, in our quarantine life, as Neighbor Island travel opened up today.
Yeah, we're happy to see that. The quarantine is lifted for travel between the islands. There you see the Hawaiian Airlines terminal over at Honolulu International Airport, the Daniel K. Inouye International Airport now. We're happy to see that. Now, if you are planning to travel inter-island, remember they will be taking your temperature. You will need to fill out some paperwork, and you can get that paperwork ahead of time. Fill it out before you get there. It takes about 3 minutes, but they do want everybody to build in a little bit of time. So, and they're encouraging you, of course, if you have sickness, if you are at all concerned about your own health, don't get on a plane, delay that trip. But good to see that that is starting to open up. And hopefully, you know, people getting to reunite with family. I know, Ryan, you and I both have family on the Big Island. And I'm sure our moms would love to see us.
Well, you've been there for quite a while.
I was there for quite a bit. Yeah, I think maybe she had enough, but I know yours definitely would like to see.
Yeah, I haven't been home since Christmas, so a great opportunity there. And again, the governor's saying expect some delays, so just plan accordingly. And of course, if you can fill out those forms ahead of time, so that you can sort of expedite that process and not have to fill out those forms upon arrival at the airport, that will help everybody out. Again, there are also another person that will be coming on later this week will be Honolulu Mayor Kirk Caldwell. He is set to join us on Thursday to talk about some of the reopening efforts that are happening this week. Of course, we know that there have been a lot of things that have already been opened. Sort of the next wave is also happening this week with gyms reopening, as well as bars reopening. We want to sort of get an update from the mayor on some of the efforts that are happening on his end. Again, Mayor Caldwell will be joining us on Thursday. But as always, we like to end our show by highlighting some of the good things that, of course, are happening in our community through our segment that we like to call our Hawaii Hero.
Yeah, our Hawaii Hero today is the Caregiver Foundation. They support people who are supporting others. They support caregivers and individuals needing care through a variety of services, including caregiver needs workshops, caregiver coordination services, and family caregiving planning. You know, this is very difficult for many families in regular times, making sure that grandma and grandpa or, you know, older relatives are cared for. It's a huge burden on every family that has to do it. And then you add the layer of COVID in there, and it just seems very, very difficult. So, you know, a lot of seniors have been isolated, and a lot of people who are in the process of caring for them have a lot of uncertainty about how much contact they should have and what they can do to, you know, maintain social distancing, but also make sure that those elderly relatives are getting the emotional and physical support that they need. So we mahalo the Caregiver Foundation. You can check out their website. It's right there. They are a Hawaii Community Foundation's Resilience Fund grantee, and we thank them for all of the wonderful work that they are doing for our community, for the elderly in our community, and of course for those who support them.
That's right. The kupuna, again, one of those 8 demographics of people that will be sort of in this quarantine and lockdown phase for a lot longer than the rest of us. So encourage however you can to support them. We are still taking letters for kupuna. You can visit coronavirushawaii.com to enter a letter that we can get over to our kupuna and those in need. So if that's another way that you can help out, but anything we can do to support this important, really group of individuals in our community would be greatly appreciated. Again, we want to thank all of you for continuing to tune in and to support this broadcast. Tomorrow we have a doctor coming in.
That's right. We have Dr. Joseph Palladino from Straub Medical Center. He has actually been treating patients who have been infected with the coronavirus. So he's going to be telling us what it has been like on the front lines here in Hawaii. What are some of the cases that they're seeing, how they've been caring for them. You know, we know about the 17 deaths, but there have been quite a number of people who have been infected with COVID and recovered. So how does that happen? And, you know, we're just very interested to hear firsthand experience interacting with patients with the coronavirus. So we're very much looking forward to talking to Dr. Palladino, and we encourage you to join that conversation with any medical questions you might have about COVID tomorrow.
That's right. As always, we like to thank our sponsors, the Hawaii Executive Collaborative and Hawaii Pacific Health, for making this conversation possible, and all of you for continuing to turn in. It's great to see some of our loyal viewers, as we sort of say, come in every day, entering your comments. We love hearing from you. We love hearing where you're watching from, and it's a great way for all of us to stay connected during these times. Again, we thank our guest, Paul Yonamine, for joining us, and as always, stay safe, and we will see you right back here tomorrow at 10:30. Aloha.
Aloha.